Welcome to my channel. Today I will talk you through an important topic in criminal law known as causation, specifically in homicide. Causation in criminal law refers to the connection between the defendant's conduct and the prohibited consequence of his action. In homicide offenses, that is, the killing of one human being by another human being, the prosecution must prove that the defendant caused the results complained of. What viewers will gain from this video? Viewers who watch this video to the end will gain a clear and practical understanding of factual and legal causation in homicide cases. 2, they will know the difference between factual causation and legal causation. 3, they will know how the Bedford test works in criminal cases. 4, they will know why causation is important in homicide and murder trials. 5, they will know the meaning of chain of causation. 6, they will know what can break the chain of causation. 7, they will know the legal effect of medical negligence in homicide cases. 8, they will know the principle established in Regina against White. They will also know the rule explained in Regina against Cheshire, and they will know why the rule in Regina versus Jordan is important in homicide cases. They will also know the meaning of Novus, Actus, Interveniens. They will know how courts determine criminal responsibility for deaths. They will also know how to analyze causation problem questions clearly. They will know how judges decide whether a defendant should still be held legally responsible when another event happens after the original act of the defendant. Who is this video meant for? This video is highly suitable for 1, law students generally. 2, Nigerian, UK, and Commonwealth law students. 3, bar course students and legal researchers. 4, lawyers and legal practitioners. 5, teachers and lecturers. 6, YouTube learners interested in homicide cases. 7, students preparing for law exams and assignments. 8, anyone who wants to understand causation in simple, clear English. 9, anyone struggling to understand factual causation, legal causation, and medical negligence in homicide cases. Now, what exactly is causation? Before I delve into what causation actually is, I would like to ask a question. Did the defendant cause the result like injury or death of the victim? In answering this question, courts usually look at it from 2 legs. 1, factual causation, and the second leg, legal causation. Now, what is factual causation? Factual causation is concerned with whether the defendant's act specifically caused the consequence, say the injury or death of the victim. In factual causation, the courts apply what is known as the Bedford test. The Bedford test, the defendant's conduct. I repeat, but for the defendant's conduct, would the other person have been injured or died? In other words, if not for the defendant's action, would the victim have died? If the answer is no, factual causation is established. But if the answer is yes, factual causation has failed. Example given, if Anismi stabs Basmiti and Basmiti dies from the injury, the court will ask, but for Anismi's stabbing, would Basmati have died? If Basmati would not have died, then Anismiti factually caused the death. However, where the consequence would have occurred, regardless of the defendant's act, factual causation fails. See an earlier English case in England in 1910. That is the case of Regina versus White, 1910, 2 King's Bench, 124. Court, King's Bench Division, England. Area of law, criminal law, causation, and attempted murder. Key legal principle. I beg your pardon, parts of the case. In Regina versus White, the defendant poisoned his mother's drink, intending to kill her. But before she drank the drink containing the poison, the mother died of a heart attack. The court held that the defendant did not actually cause her death because she would have died even without the poison being put in her cup. Court's decision. The court held that the defendant did not cause her mother's death. Therefore, he was not guilty of murder. He was, however, guilty of attempted murder because he intended to kill his mother. Importance of this case. This is one of the leading cases on a factual causation, and it established the Bedford test principle. It also established criminal liability in homicide. See also another English case, Regina against Cheshire, 1991, 1 WLR 844, Court of Appeal. Facts of this case. In this case, the defendant, Cheshire, shot the victim during an argument. The victim was then rushed to the hospital and placed on life support. But while receiving treatment, the victim developed complications after a tracheotomy procedure. These complications caused breathing difficulties, and the victim later died. Note that medical evidence showed that the hospital treatment was poor, and that the medicine cause and that the immediate cause of death was linked to the medical complication rather than the gunshot wound itself. Notwithstanding, Cheshire argued that the negligent medical treatment broke the chain of causation. Therefore, he should not be held liable for the victim's death. The legal issue involved. Did the poor medical treatment break the chain of causation? so that Cheshire was no longer legally responsible for the death. The court's decision. The Court of Appeal held that Cheshire was still legally responsible for the death. This is because the original shooting remained a significant and operating or leading cause of the victim's death. The court went further to say that medical negligence will only break the chain of causation in very rare circumstances. This case also established the important rule that even if medical treatment is negligent, the defendant remains liable if his actions are still a significant cause of the victim's death, and that the chain of causation is only broken when the medical treatment is so independent of the defendant's acts and so potent in causing death that the original injury becomes insignificant. That is, only extremely useful, unusual, or completely independent medical negligence will break the chain of causation. Hey, does this surprise you? Wait to hear the next case before you decide. Now, when is the chain of causation broken? At this juncture, let's turn to legal causation. Legal causation asks a deeper question. Should the defendant be held legally responsible for the result of his action? Even if someone started a chain of events, the law checks if something else broke that chain. The idea of chain of causation, sometimes another event happens after the defendant's act. For example, bad medical treatment. Something unexpected happened, and another person's action. These are all examples of break in causation. If that new event is strong enough, it may break the chain. To buttress my point, see the case of the Crown against Jordan, 1956, 40 criminal appeal reports, 152. In this case, Jordan stabbed the victim during a fight. The victim was taken to hospital and appeared to be recovering from the stab wound. Take note, appeared to be recovering from the stab wound. However, doctors gave the victim a drug to which he was known to be allergic. Take note of those two key points. The medical staff continued administering the drug even after signs showed it should have been stopped. Take note of that too. The victim later died because of the medical treatment complications. Can you hear that? Legal issue involved. Did the negligent medical treatment break the chain of causation so that Jordan was no longer legally responsible for the victim's death? Now, hear the decision of the court. The court held that Jordan was not guilty of homicide, that the medical treatment had broken the chain of causation. The court found that the stab wound had substantially healed, and since the medical treatment was palpably wrong, the treatment became the immediate and overwhelming cause of death of the victim. principle established in this case established that a defendant will not be liable for the death of the victim if a completely independent and extraordinary negligent medical treatment becomes the real cause of death. In other words, if the original injury is no longer significant and the medical negligence is the overwhelming cause of death, then the chain of causation may be broken. This case shows the rare situation where medical negligence removes criminal liability from the original attacker. In this case, Jordan, the medical treatment was so abnormal and serious that it broke the chain of causation. And the court held that the medical mistake broke the chain, so the defendant was not responsible for the victim's death. Now, if a victim dies mainly because doctors made an extremely serious and independent mistake, the original attacker may no longer be legally responsible for the victim's death. Final takeaway. Factual causation determines whether the defendant actually caused the result, while legal causation determines whether the law considers the defendant sufficiently responsible for that result. Both must usually be established before criminal liability can arise, especially in homicide cases. It is worthy to note that legal causation goes beyond factual causation. It examines whether the defendant should be held legally responsible for the consequence of his action. In establishing legal causation, the defendant's conduct must satisfy two conditions. His conduct must be the substantial cause, and two, an operating or leading cause of the harm. The law also considers whether any intervening act broke the chain of causation. And that is what we call intervening acts. Now, what is intervening act? This is an independent event that may occur after the defendant's conduct and breaks the causal chain. This is also called Novus Actus Interveniens. That is a new intervening act. Some examples of intervening acts include A. Extraordinary medical negligence. B. Unforeseeable third-party acts. And C. The victim's own conduct. Remember, always remember, factual causation, check, did the defendant actually cause the result using the but-for test? Legal causation, should the defendant still be blamed in law? Was there a broken chain? Again, check, did it happen because of the defendant? Then check, should the law still hold him responsible? And unless I can assist further, this is where I bow out. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share to make this channel grow. Thank you.